There is a silence that doesn't make noise. It follows through crowded rooms, across dinner tables, in the reflection of mirrors that once promised youth. It's the silence of not being seen, of existing in a space where glances slide past as if the body were only air. Once there were eyes that lingered, voices that softened when they spoke, hands that reached without hesitation. But time shifts everything. Skin changes, lines appear, and slowly the world stops noticing. That ache becomes part of the day, heavier than words can capture. There were mornings when the loneliness pressed so deeply it seemed carved into the bones. A smile offered to someone across the street would vanish into nothing, as though it never touched them. Conversations slipped into politeness, stripped of spark. Every step felt like a reminder of being placed on the far edge of desire, where no one looks long enough to see what still breathes beneath. Yet even in that wait, the heart never forgets what it is to burn. Memory holds on to the nights when passion came without thought, when a single touch could melt the world away. It becomes a kind of cruel companionship, remembering something so vividly that it aches more than forgetting. Every unspoken word, every unnoticed gesture, collects in the chest until it feels too full, too fragile to hold. The world has a way of making invisibility feel permanent. Friends talk about grandchildren, about comfort, about slowing down. And there is nodding, smiling, pretending that's enough. But beneath the surface is a hunger that hasn't died, one that whispers in the quiet of night, asking if anyone will ever look again, if anyone will ever notice what waits behind the tired smiles and careful steps. Then, without warning, a glance changes everything. It wasn't dramatic, not the kind of stare that demands attention, but something gentler, quieter, yet more powerful than anything felt in years. The eyes that lingered did not slide past, did not dismiss. They held steady and certain, as though seeing deeper than what was shown. For a moment the silence shattered. That single gaze carried warmth. It reached places thought long abandoned, lighting a spark under ashes that had grown cold. Suddenly the air felt different, charged, as though the room had shifted shape. The heart stumbled, confused by a sensation nearly forgotten, the sensation of being wanted. That recognition, unspoken but undeniable, tore through the walls built from years of invisibility. Every brush of his presence became sharper after that. The way his voice softened, the way his laughter pulled something inside closer to life. Even the smallest gestures, a hand resting near, a glance exchanged in passing, felt weighted with something more. It was frightening, overwhelming, and yet irresistible. For the first time in years, the body felt awake, as though it had been waiting for this one moment to prove it had not been left behind by time. Loneliness had been a constant companion, shaping the days into quiet rituals of endurance, but now, suddenly, each moment carried possibility. The ache of being unseen began to crack, replaced by the trembling anticipation of what could come next. That gaze, that simple gaze, had reignited something so raw it almost hurt to breathe. It reminded that desire had not disappeared. It had only been waiting for someone brave enough to look closely enough to find it. And in that realization, the heart whispered a truth too long buried. Being unseen was never the end. Sometimes it only takes one unexpected gaze to remind the soul that passion can never truly be lost, only hidden, waiting for the moment it is set free again. It was in that moment that the ache of invisibility began to dissolve. It happened in a way that words can never fully prepare for. There had been glances before, lingering just a moment longer than necessary, brushing against skin without ever touching. Each look carried weight, but still it seemed safe, still it could be denied. Age, fear, doubt, these were the walls built to keep everything contained. But then came the moment that shattered all of it, the moment lips met for the first time. It wasn't planned, wasn't even something imagined. It came like a storm breaking through still air, sudden and overwhelming. 1 second there was only silence, the careful space of restraint, and the next there was heat, the press of his mouth against mine, the taste of a hunger both unexpected and inevitable, every barrier carefully built over years, every doubt, every rule, collapsed in that instant. The kiss was not gentle at first. It was raw, trembling with the weight of everything unsaid. It carried all the lonely nights, all the quiet longing, all the hidden hunger that had been buried beneath silence. His lips claimed and mine answered, not with hesitation but with surrender, as if waiting for this exact moment. In that closeness, fear tried to speak, but passion drowned it. The mind whispered warnings about age, about what was proper, about the judgment of the world. But the body remembered something older than rules. It remembered desire, remembered fire, remembered what it meant to be alive in the arms of another. That memory surged forward, unstoppable, demanding to be felt again. The heat of his breath, the strength of his hands pulling closer, the trembling that ran through my body. It was all too real, too consuming to deny. What began as a kiss became something deeper, something that carried us past thought into pure instinct. Time blurred, the world fell away, and in that space, nothing existed but us. It was forbidden, yes, but that only made it more intoxicating. Every touch carried danger, every gasp carried risk, and yet that very danger set the fire burning higher. The years of silence, of restraint, of pretending not to feel, all unraveled in seconds, and once unraveled, there was no turning back. There was sweetness, too, hidden beneath the hunger. The way he paused to look into my eyes, the way his lips softened after the first urgency, the way he held me as if afraid I might vanish. That tenderness made the fire burn even brighter, because it wasn't only lust that lived in that kiss, it was recognition. Recognition of a soul that had been waiting, of a desire that had been ignored too long. The kiss deepened until it was no longer just mouths meeting, but bodies speaking in a language older than words. Every shiver, every sigh was a confession. It was the breaking of chains, the surrender of restraint, the opening of a door long closed. Fear was still there, whispering of consequences, but desire was louder. Desire shouted, demanded, claimed. When it ended, when lips finally parted, there was no going back to what had been before. Breathless, trembling, eyes searching each other's, it was clear the fire had been lit. It was no longer hidden, no longer buried. It had been set free, and once free, it could never be caged again. That kiss was more than passion. It was awakening. A forbidden awakening that proved something time had tried to erase. That the heart does not age, that desire does not disappear, and that love, in its rawest form, can still break through fear and silence when least expected. And with that kiss, a part of me that had been asleep for years finally opened its eyes again. Night has a way of stripping away pretense. The world outside grows quiet, shadows soften, and the walls that hold back desire grow thinner with every heartbeat. That night began with nothing more than silence, the kind that carries weight, the kind that says more than words could. But beneath it, there was something building, something that had been waiting far too long to be released. The first touch was hesitant, as though testing the edge of a flame. Fingers brushed against skin with the uncertainty of someone who both craves and fears the fire. But hesitation never lasts when hunger has been denied for too long. That small touch ignited something deeper, and suddenly restraint was gone. His hands moved with purpose, tracing lines across my body as though reading a map he already knew by heart. Every curve, every breath was explored with reverence and hunger entwined. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Years of silence cannot erase the memory of passion. The moment his hands held me, the moment his mouth pressed against my skin, it was as if the years folded away. Every nerve awoke, every part of me that had been dormant shuddered back into life. It was not just desire, it was recognition, as though my body had been waiting, aching, for this precise storm to arrive. Heat spread quickly, rising like a tide. My own hands answered his, exploring, trembling, yet desperate to claim. There was no stopping it, no reason left to resist. Each kiss, each caress, drew us deeper into the night, deeper into the hunger that had been caged too long. It wasn't rushed, yet it was unstoppable like waves breaking against the shore. Each one stronger, more consuming than the last. The world outside ceased to exist. There was no past, no future, only the present. The intoxicating reality of bodies entwined, of breathless gasps, of whispers that came from someplace beyond thought. The hunger between us was not only physical, it was spiritual, emotional, something far greater than flesh alone. It was as if two pieces of a broken soul had finally been pulled together, locking into place in the only way they could. Every touch carried both urgency and tenderness. His hands claimed me with a hunger that spoke of need, yet they also lingered, worshipped, held me as though I were both flame and treasure. My body answered in kind, giving in, surrendering, aching not just to be touched, but to be known. The storm swirled around us, fast and unrelenting, yet in its center was a strange stillness, a deep knowing that this was where I was meant to be. Time unraveled, minutes stretched into something infinite, every second soaked with heat and closeness. Skin against skin, heartbeat against heartbeat, the night became a song of passion and release. There were moments of fire, of hunger so fierce it consumed everything, and then moments of gentleness, of pauses where eyes met and silence said what words never could. The surrender was total. There was no part of me that held back, no thought of caution, no whisper of doubt. The body gave, the soul gave, until nothing remained hidden. That kind of surrender doesn't come often. It comes only when desire and trust collide, when hunger is matched with recognition. And in that storm, I was taken apart and remade all at once. When the storm finally began to ease, when bodies lay trembling in the aftermath, there was no regret, no fear, only the warmth of skin, the steady rhythm of breathing, and the unshakable truth that something sacred had been unleashed. What had been locked away for so long had been freed, and in that freedom, I rediscovered a part of myself I thought was lost forever. That night proved passion never dies. It only waits for the moment it can finally break free again. The night had burned itself into something unforgettable, a storm of hunger and fire. Yet when the silence finally returned, it was not emptiness that filled the room. It was something softer, something that wrapped around us like a second skin. The passion had left us trembling, but in the stillness that followed, there was a different kind of trembling, one born not of lust but of recognition. Skin rested against skin, warm and steady, carrying more meaning than any words could have spoken. The heat of desire still lingered, but it had melted into something deeper, something gentler, a quiet rhythm that pulsed between us. His breathing against my shoulder, the slow rise and fall of his chest, the subtle pressure of his hand still holding me as if he couldn't bear to let go, it all spoke louder than promises ever could. It was in that silence, in that closeness, that I understood what had truly happened. It wasn't just a body answering another body. It wasn't just hunger meeting hunger. It was two souls finding each other in a way that defied age, fear, and the weight of time. For years I had believed passion belonged only to youth, that love's fire faded as years wore on. But in that afterglow, I knew how wrong that belief had been. There was a trembling inside me, not from exhaustion, not from the fever of desire, but from the fragile beauty of being seen so completely. His hand traced slow, tender circles against my arm, and every motion said, "I am here, I see you, I want you still." That was the kind of intimacy no storm of passion could ever achieve on its own. It belonged to the moments after, when all masks were gone, when nothing remained but the truth. The warmth of his body against mine seeped into places I thought had gone cold. It reminded me that love does not age, that passion is not erased by time, only buried beneath silence and the fear of being forgotten. That warmth reached deeper than flesh. It reached into the lonely parts of my soul that had waited so long for recognition. In that quiet, nothing felt forbidden anymore. The world outside, with its judgments and expectations, faded away. What lingered was a peace I hadn't felt in years, a sense of belonging that no words could give. It was as if the night itself had chosen to remind me that love, in its purest form, was never about years or rules. It was about connection, about two hearts beating in rhythm when they finally dared to collide. We didn't speak much. There was no need. His eyes found mine in the dim light, and in that gaze lived every confession, every vow, every truth that could not be spoken aloud. I held it in my heart, knowing that no matter what tomorrow brought, this moment would remain untouched, sacred. The afterglow stretched into hours, the kind of hours that feel both fleeting and endless. Every breath, every sigh, every shift of his body against mine felt etched into memory. The fire of passion had been powerful, but it was this, the tenderness, the stillness, the recognition, that made it unforgettable. As dawn began to whisper through the window, I realized something I never thought I would feel again. Desire is powerful, yes, but it is this quiet, trembling truth that makes love eternal, because passion may ignite the night, but tenderness carries it into forever. And in that afterglow, I knew with certainty that love and passion do not fade with time. They only wait for the moment they are finally awakened again. Thank you for listening. If these stories touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, so you never miss a moment where passion and love awaken again.